we're bringing you something that's gonna hit you right in the feels. We're talking to 5 teenagers who were sentenced to life in prison and getting their reactions to the news. Yeah, you heard that right. Life in prison. These are young adults who are never going to see the outside world again, and we're here to hear their stories and learn from their experiences. It's hard to imagine being told at such a young age that you're going to spend the rest of your life behind bars. These teenagers had their whole lives ahead of them, but their actions landed them in a place where they'll be spending the rest of their days. We're going to be diving deep into their emotions, what they were thinking at the time of their crimes, and how they've coped with being in prison. We'll be hearing from the teenagers who are convicted of different crimes, from robbery to murder. These are stories that are going to make you think and reflect on your own life. It's easy to judge someone from the outside looking in, but hearing their stories can give us a better understanding of why they made the decisions they did. So, if you're ready to hear from 5 teenagers who are serving life in prison and learn from their experiences, then hit the subscribe button and let's get started. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the lives of these teenagers and gaining some insight that we may have never had before. This is a video you don't want to miss. Number 1. Nicole Kipmiller. Nicole Kipmiller was sentenced to a minimum of 8 years and a maximum of 15 years in prison for the slaying of her newborn baby. Bay County Circuit Judge Joseph K. Sheeran also sentenced her to a minimum of 80 months and a maximum of 10 years for a charge of disposing the body. This sentence will be served concurrently with the other. Kipmiller had been incarcerated at the Bay County Jail since her arraignment in February 2010. She apologized to her family and thanked them for their support. She also apologized to Sheeran, saying that she knows the case had been difficult for all involved. Kipmiller pleaded no contest to involuntary manslaughter and disposal of a body in exchange for the dismissal of a count of second-degree murder. The case was about trying to find justice for the baby boy, said Bay County Chief Assistant Prosecutor Nancy E. Barusco. Kipmiller's sentence brings closure to a difficult case for all involved. The baby's death was a tragedy, and Kipmiller's actions were unacceptable. The case was first brought in light in January 2010, when Kipmiller gave birth to a baby boy in a hotel room. She then placed the baby in a plastic bag and threw him into a trash can. When asked about the incident, Kipmiller claimed that she had given birth to a stillborn child and panicked, not knowing what to do. However, the autopsy report showed that the baby was still alive at birth and died from asphyxia due to being placed in a plastic bag. Kipmiller was subsequently charged with second-degree murder, but the charge was dismissed in exchange for the plea deal. Number 2. Antonio Barbeau. Antonio Barbeau was only 14 years old when he committed a heinous crime that shocked his community. He was sentenced to life in prison for taking the life of his great-grandmother, Barbara Olson, with a hatchet in her Sheboygan Falls home in September 2012. Barbeau's case sparked a national debate about the harshness of sentencing minors to life in prison. Despite his young age, Barbeau was not given any leniency by the court. He will reportedly be eligible for parole when he is 50 years old. During his sentencing, Barbeau read a statement in court apologizing for his crime. He asked for forgiveness and expressed deep regret for his actions. However, his remorse did little to mitigate the gravity of his crime. Prosecutors argued that he and his friend, Nathan Papp, had broken into Olson's home with the intent to rob her. They ended up taking her life with brutal force, using a hatchet and a hammer. Number 3. King Brothers. The case of King brothers, Derek and Alex, made headlines for their shocking and gruesome act of murdering their own father, Terry King, with a baseball bat and setting their home on fire. The brothers were just 14 and 13 years old at the time of the crime, respectively, and their sentencing to state prison became a topic of intense debate and scrutiny. After a year-long legal battle, the King brothers were ultimately sentenced to 8 and 7 years in prison, respectively, with credit for the time they spent in jail. This decision was made after an unprecedented attempt at mediation by Pensacola attorney Bill Eddins, who negotiated an agreement between the prosecution and defense teams that allowed the boys to plead guilty to lesser charges of third-degree murder and arson in exchange for the truthful account of their father's death. Number 4. Josh Phillips. Josh Phillips, a 14-year-old boy, committed one of the most gruesome crimes in Florida's history in 1998 when he took the life of an 8-year-old girl, Maddie Clifton. On November 3rd, Maddie came to play with Phillips, and while they were playing, he accidentally hit her in the eye with a baseball bat. Fearing his father's wrath, he dragged her into the house and slit her throat, then stashed her lifeless body under his bed, where it remained for a week before being discovered by Phillips' mother. Police had been searching for Maddie for 6 days before her body was finally found. Phillips was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During his trial, Phillips' defense team argued that he was not in his right mind when he committed the crime. as he had been suffering from severe depression and had experienced hallucinations. However, the prosecution argued that he was fully aware of his actions and should be held accountable for his actions. Number 5. Shirley Wolf and Cindy Collier. Shirley Wolf and Cindy Collier were two teenage girls who committed the heinous crime that shocked the nation. On June 14, 1984, the pair knocked on the door of 85-year-old Anna Brackett and convinced her that they were being followed by strange men. Once inside, they attacked and killed her. What happened next was written in Wolf's diary, where she proudly admitted to taking the life of an old lady and said that it was lots of fun. After 3 days of psychiatric evaluations, it was determined that Wolf was fully aware of her actions and was therefore considered a cold-blooded criminal. Both girls received the same sentence of 8 years in a juvenile detention facility, with additional time added for bad behavior. The case of Wolf and Collier shocked the nation and sparked a national conversation about juvenile crime and the need for stricter punishments. Many people were outraged that two young girls could commit such a heinous crime and not receive a harsher sentence. Some even argued that they should have been tried as adults and faced life in prison. In an interview conducted several years after the crime, Phillips expressed remorse for his actions and acknowledged the pain he had caused Maddie's family. He stated that he had been in a fantasy world, trying to ignore reality of what he had done. He also admitted that he had no idea what life or death meant and did not fully understand the extent of suffering his actions would cause. Bonus, here's your reward for being with us through the whole video. Number 6. Max McDougal. The case of Max McDougal is a unique and poignant example of the complex and often heartbreaking circumstances that can lead to a child growing up behind bars. Max, who has committed no crime of his own, was born in prison to his mother, Jacqueline McDougal, who was serving time for theft. While the idea of a child being raised in a prison environment may seem distressing, the reality for Max and his mother is somewhat different. McDougal, who had struggled with drug addiction, credits her time in prison and her responsibility as a mother with helping her turn her life around. Despite the challenges of parenting in a prison setting, McDougal has fully embraced her role as a mother, bathing, diapering, and nursing her son around the clock. The experience has also given her the opportunity to take parenting classes and receive support from prison staff, which she believes will help her be a better parent when she is eventually released. We hope this video has given you insight into the consequences of committing serious crimes as a teenager. Let it be a reminder that every action has a reaction, and it's never too late to turn your life around. Thank you for watching.
I had no clue what life meant, what death meant, nor the depths of suffering that could follow one act.
Stand currently is Alex King. He is one of the young men accused of actually brutally beating or helping to beat his father to death. Although this is not his trial, this is the trial of Mr. Chavez, the adult co-defendant, who is having a separate proceeding. They're now discussing whether or not this young man should be questioned as to whether or not he really understands what's going on. He's 13 years old now, 12 at the time the crime was committed. Let's go on live.
Alex, you're charged with first-degree murder, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
And I want you to know, I want the jury to know that I'm giving you what's called use immunity. That means that you can tell the truth here today, you can testify, and whatever you say here today can't be used against you. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.